All right, family, welcome, welcome. We are here today with episode 3 of Relationships Uncensored. Welcome, welcome. Glad to be back. We have a treat today. We actually have a very special guest that is joining us to give us his perspective. Remember, I talked about in episode 2 that it's his perspective, her perspective, and then we got the truth. That's because we create our own reality sometimes. We create our own perspective of what the situation looks and feels like, right? And so, Relationships Uncensored is about getting both understanding, not to say who's right or wrong, but understanding each other so that we can have a more cohesive, a more peaceful and loving relationship. And so, just to give you an idea of what you're about to get today, you are going to embark on the male perspective of knowing your choices in your relationship. We talked about in episode 2 cheating, infidelity, the impact it has on a relationship. And we wanted to back it up a minute and talk about what leads up to that, right? Our choices we made or things that we didn't do to be proactive in our relationship that got us to where we are today. And so, without further ado, I am going to introduce to you Mr. Rob Hurst. He is a father of 4, has one precious grandbaby that I know if he's like me, he just adores. He is a musician. Woo woo! I heard some of his music, and you got to check it out. He is a successful entrepreneur, and I call a very close business partner of mine as well. I've had the pleasure to be mentored by him in my entrepreneurial journey, and I just love, love, love everything that he says. It just is golden. And he's also a successful coach in network marketing and in sales. So if you ever need somebody to coach you in your business, turn to Mr. Hurst. So without further ado, welcome, Mr. Hurst. Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Awesome. Well, welcome and thank you for being a part of Me First Now's Relationships Uncensored. I know that you were actually commenting in after the first episode 2, and it really intrigued me because I was so honored to even have you comment. You're so busy, and for you to take the time to actually give your feedback meant a lot to me. So thank you for being on today and sharing your perspective. You're the voice for the males out there that often don't get hurt, right? It's usually women bash males, males, and males will usually don't care half the time, right? They're just like, whatever, she's not going to listen anyway, and they don't get hurt. But this is a platform for voices to be heard. And so I want to just jump right in there to the topic we were discussing yesterday of infidelity and when it hits a relationship. But more so, I was intrigued with your feedback on choices, right? If you can expand on that and what you meant and the options that to make better choices and your perspective on that, it's all yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay. Awesome. Well, first off, thanks for having me on. And definitely when I saw your video or your live, I was like, oh, that's an interesting topic. And it is kind of one of those things that I have definitely had many conversations with many men and women over the years. Many times sometimes we're all trying to figure things out, right? And so you get these conversations happening, you start talking about relationships, because I believe everybody wants to be in a great harmonious relationship. I think that's what most people desire. In fact, as human beings, we've been made to kind of be connected to someone. So when I talked about choices, I'm talking from a perspective because I've been on both sides. So I've been on the side where I've stepped out in my early 20s, right, in a past relationship. I've been in that situation. And there's a whole nother story behind that, but I'm only talking about myself, right? But I've also been in a situation where I've been stepped out on. So I've been in both seats. So I've had an opportunity. I can talk from both sides and understand from a male's perspective why some males may find themselves in certain situations, whether it was them that stepped out or whether they were the one that got stepped out on. And I think, oftentimes society, has created this picture, to your point, where it's always assumed that the male did something. That's not always the case. I always say many times, so I have conversations with women over the years. I say, well, listen, if that was your brother or your father or your son and that happened to them, how would you feel? And then it changes. It's like, oh, I'd be upset. Nobody gonna do that to my brother or my son, right? And so we just have to look at both sides of it. And so I've never been a person to just kind of just take it for face value. There's always a story behind the story. It takes two to tango, right? It takes two. And so to your point, it's a choice, right? And so is it the best choice? That's the question. Is that the best choice? So I know when I was in my 20s, looking back on it, it was not the best choice. There was a void, there was a need, and whatever that time trying to process, it's like, well, you get yourself caught up in a situation, and now here it is, you've created a worse situation that doesn't really help anyone. And so, but it is a choice, right? So what's a better choice? A better choice can be, well, you know what? Maybe, right, these two individuals need to really severely seek counseling before it gets to a point of no return. That's a better choice. And it's not something that you just try counseling out. Like, you have to kind of like be committed. Like, one of the things, Cindy, I share with people often is that, we see the value of having a personal trainer to work out. We see the value of having a coach for sports, but yet most people may not see the value of having coaching in relationships. As children, we live out the pictures we embrace. So a lot of times we may see things that have happened in the past and then, or how we saw our parents interact with their significant other. And then that's our lesson. So I'll give you an example. I have a really close friend of mine. His mom and dad have been married for years. I mean, they're in 50 years. And his wife's mom and dad have been together for 50 years. So, it's really not shocking that they're still together after 20 years or 25 years. I think they're 25 years in, because they had those pictures, right? But when you take two people and they may have been in a situation where that was not the case, it's up to those two people to determine what that can look like moving forward for us, right? So even though we may not necessarily have the best pictures, what can we do? And so that's where the coaching, that's where even some of the things that you're doing. I met a woman just the other day at a networking event, and that's what she does, right? She coaches couples. I was like, man, you're needed. People need you. People need you. Couples need you. And so anyway, so when I said it was a choice, that's what I mean. It's like, was that the best choice?
Is there a better choice to make? Go ahead. That's super powerful. You touched on the younger days, right? We've all been there. I know myself, I was married at 19. Mm-hmm. You don't even know how to freaking live life yet at 19, right? What are you doing getting married? But I had this vision in my head, right? I wanted the beautiful dress and I wanted everything. I just wanted that dream, supposedly, right? And so I got married really, really young, and we divorced really, really young. But I learned life lessons in that time frame. It was probably a 5-year time frame of having 3 children, going through the ups and downs and ending in divorce, right? We don't always think about, oh, I should go get counseling, right? At that age. I know I didn't. I was just like, you need to be here and you need to support me. Do you, as your younger self, if you take a step back, and this is probably an episode of 15, we're going to talk about your younger self. If you took a step back and you wanted to talk to the younger Rob Hurst, what would you say at that young age when it's going through your mind of stepping out?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really simple. Ask the hard questions. Don't be afraid to say what needs to be said. When you feel it, just say it. Because if you're in a situation where you're not given the platform and the freedom to express, that's not a situation that's going to work long term, because you'll never be heard. Right. So, have the hard questions, ask the hard questions. And matter of fact, ask the questions early on before it even gets to that point where there's some full lifetime commitment, because they may come back in a way where it just causes issues later down the road. Now, here's the other side to that, Cindy. Sometimes you can look back and say, well, what could I have done differently, or what could have been done differently? But you can only really operate on what you know. So, for example, let's just say, I'm going to give you an example. Let's say someone is in a relationship with someone, and, it's, some months in, maybe a year in, and, they're starting to have some serious conversations. And this person neglects to tell them, and again, I'm just using it as an example. It's just a random example, that they were a crackhead back in the day. Okay. That person might want to know that, because there might be some things that need to be worked out. It's like, if that's kind of major, like the questions would be is, do you still struggle with that? How did you get through that? Right. But it gives that other person opportunity to decide, okay, I love this person enough to hear them out. And based on what I'm seeing, it looks like they have progressed. And my goodness, I'm so glad you're in a better place. But sometimes people may not say it because maybe in the back, maybe it's still a struggle. Maybe it's still back there. Or let me give you another example. Let's just say, and again, I'm just making random examples. Let's say a heterosexual woman gets with a heterosexual man, and they come together. The relationship is developing, is going to the direction of, okay, I think we're going to pursue a lifetime together. And later on in the relationship, that husband reveals that they were involved in homosexuality in their past. Again, everybody has their life, but that heterosexual woman may want to know that information so that she can be able to assess, okay, how do we work through that? Or how did you work through that? Because they may want to know, is that a struggle? Is that a challenge? Like, these are very serious questions. When I talk about hard questions, that's what I mean. Like, is there anything from the past, right? Some traumatic experiences that we should know. So that way, if we decide to move forward, we can maybe work through that before we can get to that point to see if it's going to necessarily be the better situation. Does that make sense? So
Yeah,
when I
and
say,
so what I'm hearing is that there's facts of your past, traumas, maybe some things that you went through. And then there's also things that your partner should know prior to you getting into a relationship, or as you guys, flourish your relationship, to talk about those hard things, those hard questions that you need to ask. They might not always be a deal breaker, but these are hard questions that you really need to know in advance before you say, yes, I'm committed to you in a relationship, or yes, I'll marry you, right? I know that a lot of us make decisions based on emotion. It feels right. This
emotions
person
and fear.
is my
I would
person.
say fear too.
I want, it feels good. They treat me so good. I don't want, we turn a blind eye. I don't want to hear what the answer is to that. So you just don't ask it, or you just, I used to have a pit bull. She passed away. Her name was Bella. And every time I looked at her, and she did something wrong, or I asked her, did you eat that off the counter? She would do this and look away. Right. And so I call it doing a Bella. When you don't want to confront something, you're going to do a Bella and just look away. Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes I know I've been guilty of it. I've ignored tons of red flags or signs, but I also have ignored wanting to ask the real question. Do you have any male perspective on this? Is it just us women that do it, or is it you guys too?
Yeah. So let me talk about men, right? Men, we're interesting creatures. I firmly believe men do want to talk and communicate and share. They want to have a safe place to do it, though. So, for example, if a guy's like, I really want to share how I'm feeling about something, and it may be a situation or concern that they're having with that woman that they're with, but they feel that if I share this, it's going to turn into something else, or it's going to turn into that woman's feelings being more important than his feelings, then he may be reluctant to share, right? He may be reluctant to share, like, okay, I don't, last time, things got a little sticky and maybe she started crying. And one thing about men is like, I don't want to add more tears to what you're already feeling. So I don't want to, so I'll just be quiet, right? I'll just, and that doesn't help anybody, because he definitely needs to be able to share as well. And he needs a safe space to share without it feeling like it's not going to go anywhere. Okay. And vice versa, right? She needs to be able to share too, right? It works for both. It works both ways. But I think I'm going to talk from a male's perspective. I think the reason why males don't want to argue, most males, let me say it like that. Most males don't want to argue. They don't want to get back and forth and all that. They're just like, listen, let's solve the problem. Let's just do this and then focus on that later. But the other part to that is, I was sitting on this panel. This is probably about 10 years ago. And I was asked to come speak at an event that were for young men and young women. Okay. And I did a session with the young men. I think we had a woman that was there doing a session with the young women. And then they had a panel. Now on this panel, it was just me and this guy. I can't remember the guy. This was over 10 years ago. And these young ladies were asking questions. And so this young lady, she stands up, she says, why don't guys share? Why don't they talk? And I'll never forget what this guy said. And it stuck with me ever since. He said, most men are afraid of sharing their deepest secrets or concerns or things from the past because they don't want it to end up on social media. Ooh. Or they don't want it to, someone is using it on social media, being very indirect and making subliminal messages, right? And because we see it happen to other people. Or if he just decides to be open and share his emotion, now he is being, they're making memes of him, right? We can look at Will Smith. We can look at Tyrese, right? And where these guys just kind of were not really feeling good about the interaction that they had with their significant other. And so we see that happen to these other guys. Like, I don't want to be that guy, right? I don't want to even go through that process of someone being very indirect and making subliminal posts, because for men, I'm just talking about men, we see women who do it. We just see it. It's like, oh my gosh, like, here we go. And so we see that happen to somebody else. It's like, well, I don't want that experience. But I think what it boils down to, Cindy, it really boils down to trust too, though. Like, if a woman gives a safe space where it's the equality of what's being said is heard, then he may be more open to share more without feeling like it's gonna be thrown back up in his face, you know. So that's a whole nother topic, right? With social media. Yeah, I think it's a whole nother topic because, in my opinion, just from a male's perspective, and only because I'm in the barbershops, I'm in conversations with other guys, and we talk about this stuff, but we don't talk about it openly because, you get talked about, right, for doing that. But I think that, oftentimes from a male's perspective, they may feel like, social media has a chokehold on the female population just because of the things that we see with all the attention and all these other different things that we continue to observe. And then, now it's like, okay, when he's really looking to, find that right person, they're paying attention to all of that stuff. I tell my daughters this all the time. I have 3 daughters. I tell them all the time, like, what you do on social media, one day the guy that's really serious is going to look at all of that. And if he's like on a path where he's like of no nonsense, you won't be found. He's going to direct his attention to somewhere else because he may feel that you could be an emotional liability. And for a guy who's really focused and trying to create something, an emotional liability is a distraction. If there's one thing that can really get a guy off is, we have so many stories, right? So many Bible stories. We just see what happens, when a guy gets off track. And women have that ability, right? They have the power to do that, but they also have the power to build him as well, right? So when they create that safe space and that safe opportunity for him to express, then it can be a kind of an opportunity where hard conversations can be had, right? Because it's no fear on both sides, though. I'm not just talking about one side. Even for women, they need to have a safe space to be able to communicate as well, both parts. Because at the end of the day, even though physically we may be different, at the same time we're all human beings, right? And we deserve to have that opportunity to express and have a safe place to share our feelings and our emotions without feeling judged. And at the same time, everybody needs to be able to have the conversation so that everybody has the opportunity to make the decision that's best for them. Yeah.
And I
So.
think to your point, so many people toggle with, should I tell him? Should I tell her? Let me just tell her what I want her to hear, because I know she will go off if I tell her this other piece, right? Or vice
Mhm.
versa. And so creating that safe space is doing just that. You want a partnership. You don't want to be his, or his mother or his warden. That's not a relationship. That's not healthy. If you're doing that, stop. Take a deep look into you. Fix you, right? Sometimes, yeah, that's hard to
Yep.
admit when we're the cause of a lot of this disharmony in our relationships. And we are going to
Yep.
dive deep. I know I am taking up a lot of your time. I
Oh no, you're
appreciate it. I
fine.
know
You're good.
you're good on time.
No, you're good.
I
Yeah,
just,
I'm good on time.
want to get your perspective on a few other things, and then I'll let you go, because I know you're a busy entrepreneur. And it was so, I was so happy when you said you had 30 minutes for me. I was just like, yes, let's get them on. But in partnership, when that safe space is not created, and we're currently, let me give you an example. We're currently in that relationship, and she is dealing with a man who doesn't talk to her, comes home, maybe sits on the couch, or comes in the door, doesn't really greet her or says, "Hey, hon," and then goes and does his thing, right? But the communication is already broken because of that safe space. I can guarantee you, most of the time, it's because he doesn't feel safe coming to you with anything, including his day, because he's gotten to a limit sometimes, right? What would
Mhm.
you say a woman could do to take baby steps to create that safe space for a man?
Yeah. Well, for starters, what's his love language?
Mm. So I take away from that, know his love language. If you
Mhm.
don't know it, find it out. I
Yep.
start with personality type as well, right?
Yeah.
Knowing his personality type gives you a little deeper understanding, and that actually is in our next episode. We're going to talk
Mhm.
about how to find his love language, but also find his personality type. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah. 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 Noah's love language, because it's very easy to do what you're comfortable with. Like, for example, someone's love language could be gifts. And so let's say a woman's love, let's just use an example, right? Susan and Mike. Okay. Susan, her love language is gifts. Mike's love language is physical touch. Okay. Susan continues to give Michael gifts. Michael's like, thank you. But that doesn't necessarily like hit him where it counts. Right. And sometimes it may not even necessarily be physical touch. It may even be just emotional touch, just showing that I see you, showing that I care about you. Right. But what can happen if Susan doesn't get that, she'll continue to do what she's doing and is not really getting anywhere. So in that example, right, know his love language. That's the thing. And then if it's not an area that you're not as familiar with, work on it. Just work on it. Right? What would it be? Ask the question. Ask the hard question. Here's a hard question. How am I doing as your
Mm.
significant other? And sometimes the answer may not necessarily be what we want to hear, but it's the truth. But sometimes you have to be willing to hear the truth in order to move forward in a better direction,
And
right?
not
How
be in a
how am I?
space of criticism, right? Do not take it as
Yeah,
criticism. If you're asking, when you ask that question, be ready to receive the answer and hear it. Hear it.
Hear it.
Open your ears to hear his response. That is so powerful, Rob. I cannot tell you, when I shifted that in my relationship of listening versus listening to respond,
Yeah.
it changed the whole dynamic. It gave me and my partnership such a different spin on really knowing each other. But continue.
Yeah. So love language, ask, get feedback. How am I doing? Check-ins. Let's do check-ins. Um, and here's the thing. He, again, to your point, he has to be able to know that he can say what he needs to say without feeling it has to be guarded because it's going to turn into some argument or something else that he does not. He just had a long day at work. He's like, I don't want to go through all that. And so, with guys, many times when I'm gonna tell you, for a man, when he comes home, what he's mostly probably thinking and wanting is to be greeted and to be embraced from being out there, going to hunt, making it happen for the family. He wants to be appreciated. And whatever that means for him, he wants to feel appreciated because no man wants to just be out there killing it and regret going home or taking their time going home. They go hang out at the bar and hang out with the guys. Nothing wrong with that, but if that's always the continuous process, we have to ask, like, what kind of situation is being created when he walks in, where he feels appreciated, where he feels like, man, I can't wait to get home to see her. I can't wait to get home to see
you
her.
guys. If you haven't taken any nuggets away from all of this conversation, Rob has just given you a roadmap to start understanding your man. I've heard so much. I'm even taking notes. But to summarize everything, being that person, that space for your mate, your partner. So when they come home, they want to come home. They want to embrace you. Knowing his love language could help you in this, because you've got to think about everything of that day. He may have had a bad day at work. He might have, people are draining him. They're not pouring into him. They're taking, right? Think about it in that work. People are take all day from your person. And when your person comes home, he wants to land in a safe place. And if you are in a position right now where your man's not coming home, take inventory of what you're doing so that he wants to come home. And if not, like Rob said, get a mentor, get a coach. I do one-on-one sessions. You can always come to me. There's plenty of coaches, life coaches out there that can help you. But more importantly, relationship coaches that can really hone in really quickly on what you need to tweak to make your relationship just be that much better. So in summarizing everything, Rob, I know that you're super busy. You are a successful entrepreneur, and I want to make sure that you take a few minutes to tell us a little bit about what you do and why people would come to you, and what services you could provide and how to get in contact with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously one of my main offerings, I work with a company called Legal Shield, and I'm actually just celebrated 20 years with the company. And so one of my main objectives is obviously creating awareness about having equal access to the justice system, really empowering families to get estate planning, and just really having access to have their rights acknowledged, right? Because the color of justice is not black or white, is really green, right? But most people are afraid of going in that direction because they just know it will cost too much. They know that they don't trust the situation, right? All those other things. And so, money is obviously a big part of that. And so we take all the money issues out of the way, and we make it a little bit easier. We also, another big offering is small business owners. That's a big one. I'm actually a regional sales trainer with the company. And so what I do is I coach people on being able to service small business owners, our small business community. That's the backbone of our country, right? And so we want to be able to provide some really great resources for those small business owners as well. I got some other stuff I'm working on too. I've got some other stuff that I'm working on. So that's coming. So I'm excited about that. Just the journey I'm on, and even this today, right? This is something I've always enjoyed talking about, because it's like, how do we get to a point where we have more harmonious connections for people? How do we get to a point? What is it that we need to learn? Just thinking, I was looking at this stat, and because we're given a male perspective, it is really important, ladies, that men have a place to express themselves to you, because many men may be suffering in silence. The stats show that a male is 4 times more likely to commit suicide than a woman. And so for many reasons, is because we're trying to stay tough, right? We can't show, any emotion and all these different things, right? And at some point, those men were boys one time, right? They were in a situation where maybe they were allowed to express that to their parents, but then when they got older, you're a big boy. And so what happens, as they get older, those young men become older men, right? And if they don't have an opportunity to grow, and here's the thing as well, Sandy, it's like, at the end of the day, no one can make you happy. You have to be happy with yourself. You have to love yourself. That's where it starts. But the person you're with should add to that, right? Like, I believe relationships are not easy, but they don't have to be hard. So when two can come together and say, okay, here's what is important here, and where do we match, and do we even match? Like, are we equally yoked for it to even really work out? Are we forcing something because we're not asking the hard questions? We're seeing certain things like, oh, I like this, I like that. It's like going to a car lot and saying, I'm going to get this car because it has this and that, but I would really want this, right? But you may have to become a different person to attract a better situation. Like, I'll give you an example. I remember meeting this guy. He was married 4 times. And so immediately I went to judge mode. 4 times. Oh my gosh, man, that's wild. 4 times. And so you start to think like, man, what is it that he didn't learn? What was the problem? I don't even know his story. I don't even know the guy's story. I met him for like 5 minutes. But here's what I know, Cindy. What I know is this, is that you attract who you are. So who's to say that the women he was with, that they hadn't been in failed relationships too? See, it's really easy to look at one person, but not look at both people, because the reason why he's gone through that, now I don't know what his situation is now, but I would venture to say the reason why he went through those 3 times, because he was broken and he attracted someone else that was broken. So now you got 2 broken people. And if those broken people don't come to a point where they say, okay, let's work through this. I see, right? I've shared with you my pains and all right, and I'm hearing yours as well. So we're both sharing. Then we can work through it. But again, going back to my first point I made earlier, those conversations, in my opinion, should be had early on before we get to that point. That shouldn't happen later. It's like a woman is not going to want to find out that the guy that she's with struggled with homosexuality in the past. She doesn't want to know that late. She wants to know that now. And that's not really fair to her, for her to find out later. And then now they got it. Now we're starting on empty. We're not even on a full tank. We're starting on empty. So now it's like, man, we already got problems out the gate. We already got problems out the gate. So you didn't even give me an opportunity, because I may have made my moves, or she may have made her moves based on information she was given. So there was really nothing she could do different, because the person wasn't being 100% honest about what their past was, which didn't really give that opportunity, a fair chance for that person to make a decision. And the reason why that person may have not shared it is because of the fear of losing, or that person deciding to do something else, because that's not going to work for them. But guess what? At the end of the day, everybody deserves to know what they're getting themselves into, and be able to have the proper coaching, go through the right process, so that they can become a better example of a working relationship.
Mm.
I don't
And,
listen. Oh, go ahead.
to your point, when you're talking about broken relationships and two broken people coming together, and, you know, we can fake it for a little bit, right? If we want
Mm-hmm.
to. But where's your foundation? You're starting on a broken foundation. I know I was married for 13 years. And in year 8, I found out about a flaw he had, a very big flaw of infidelity. But he had suppressed it when we got married. He was doing it a lot before, and he suppressed it because he loved me that much. And no amount of love could stop it from surfacing again. So you're lying to yourself if you think you can suppress something that has been a part of you for your entire life, or even a new thing that started in your midlife or whatever age. Share it with your partner. It's an important piece to the puzzle that everybody deserves to know, so that either you guys can work together to mend it and be better together, or you can give each other the space needed to get that growth in, to become better versions of yourself. And then you might end up back together. But you must be honest. It's honesty,
You
right?
got to be honest. Yeah, yeah. And I'll even add this last piece. You know, whether it's the man that's gotten cheated on or the woman that's gotten cheated on, here's what I know. Okay. First off, the person that's in the relationship is the guilty party for making a decision. That's not the best decision. And so it's oftentimes the other person in the relationship wants to be upset at the outside party, but it's really the person in the inside that even allowed it to happen. Okay. But here's what's interesting about this. Because again, you attract who you are, right? So for someone on the outside to engage someone, whether it's a woman trying to engage a married man or a man trying to engage a married woman, that person has integrity issues. They have character and integrity issues. They have no boundaries. Okay. But again, they're only allowed to do that because the person that they're dealing with also has challenges with integrity and character as well on this particular topic. Okay. And so now what happens, you have two people who have character integrity issues. And let's just say they end up going off somewhere. I have yet to meet anyone where that relationship really worked out.
Mm.
You look up and it's like a year later, what happened? I've yet to see it. So what was that all about? That's why I start off saying it's not the best choice. It's a choice, but it's not the best choice because it never really works out. So the very thing the person was allowing and was attracted to may have thought like, okay, this is as they say, the grass is greener, right? So they think the situation is better. But the person that they're dealing with obviously has character integrity issues as well. So it's broken, two broken people, right? So we got the same situation going on, right? So there's really the lesson. So I believe we go through things to learn, those lessons, right? And I would say probably, as you stated earlier, what would I tell the younger version is ask the hard questions, ask them. No matter what happens, just let the cards fall where they may. That way, at least both parties, if they're honest, can make a decision as to does this make sense, or is there something I need to do for me to get better, right? I mean, it's a lot, but again, that's why I said cheating it's a choice. It's not the best choice. It could be a better choice. What's a better choice is what can we do to work on it? Like if I have a credit score of 500, do I just say that's just what my credit score is going to be for the rest of my life? Or do I work on it? You work on it, right? You have a choice. It's a choice. And guess what? It can get better if you work on it. So we work on ourselves by working on ourselves, loving ourselves, taking ownership. I think you said the other day, what part did I play? what could I've done differently and what will I do differently moving forward, then it allows that person to, number one, be in a better situation, but number two, to make a better impact, which is why I was so glad you invited me on, because hopefully this is helping somebody. This is helping somebody right now. Maybe you're in a relationship right now and there's, you're wondering like, get counseling, like really like, and sit down and say, listen, I want to give you free reign for us to be honest. We need to be 1000% honest, because I am struggling here, or maybe I'm struggling here, and I don't want to do that. So I want to come to you as the person that I'm in a relationship with and say, what can we honestly do about this starting today? And then stick to it, right? Work together with it.
Love it,
We
Rob.
know life gets busy.
You are talking nothing but knowledge when you, and I love that, how open you are to discuss and share, because yes, you are helping tons of people. And there's exercise I go through, and anybody can do this. But we talked about the inner child, right? The little Rob Hurst, that was a little boy and has some trauma, because wherever that started, whether you are an alcoholic, you're, a cheater, or you had some mental or physical abuse, wherever that little child began feeling that trauma is where that little boy is left. And so little Cindy had to go backwards, and still does. It's a forever growth in yourself. But if you find yourself being triggered, one key thing to do is go backwards to go forward, and go to the little Cindy that was traumatized for whatever was triggering me, and find out why and get resolution. And I call it ripping off the Band-Aid, because it's going to be hard. It's hard to face things that hurt us. It's hard to face things that make us feel uncomfortable, but we are going to have so much joy and peace once we do it, that you're going to be ecstatic to rip off the next Band-Aid and the next one. And you're going to take baby steps to just becoming the better version of you, so that you can give it to your partner. And if you don't have a safe place, you can't create a safe place for somebody else. So do housekeeping on your own safe place. Yeah. Do you have yours without somebody, so that you can create a very safe, loving, and peaceful place for your partner? So with that, thank you, Rob, for joining us today. Go ahead.
I got one more story real quick. I was just thinking about something you just said. My bad. I don't want to monopolize your show. So I was having a conversation with someone, and this was like, I don't know, I can't remember when this was, but anyway, so we were having a conversation. Actually, it was a cousin of mine, and so we were talking about this couple that, things that didn't work out, and the woman stepped out, right? And so what she said was, man, she must have been unhappy. My response was, who's to say he wasn't either? It was a choice. It was a choice. So if one person stepped out, the other one didn't, it's not to say that the other person wasn't just as unhappy. It just, that person may have decided not to go that route, but the other person did. And so going back to my original thought early on, is from a male's perspective, a lot of times it's assumed that the guy did something. That's not always the case, when we see situations. So I've just learned to just, when people go through that kind of stuff, I just sit back and I say, okay, you know what? Hopefully there's something they learn from that. Hopefully they become a better person, and both parties can live a happy life, and look back and say, okay, maybe those lessons they can share with someone else to help those individuals. So if they go through something similar, they may be able to say, hey, listen, like, I know me, when I talk to young men, like I have a little cousin that just got married. I had a serious conversation with him. I say, hey, listen, man, let me tell you something. You're young. Okay. It's going to be really important that you do ... And he's young, like he's like 21 years old, but I was able to have a serious conversation with him. I said, I'm telling you, here I am, I'm 48 years old now. I know I don't look 48, but I'm telling you from my experience when I was your age, these are things that I wish I would have done. Okay. And so we all get a chance. We're all connected, right? So we all get a chance to help each other. And I appreciate you, Cindy, for what you're doing to help the community. with your conversations, your talks. And these talks are necessary, right? Because it gives people an opportunity to really think things out.
I would love to have you back because I know you're a wealth of knowledge on a lot of various topics, including business. So I will definitely reach out to you again to be a guest. I know our viewers are going to just love this, and those that are watching this on any platform, we are streaming live from Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube. So if you're watching it on replay, just hit I'm watching it on replay or whatever comments you have for Rob. And in closing, Rob, how can our viewers contact you if they need, any type of coaching or mentorship from you or want to learn more about Legal Shield?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on Instagram, I'm on IG, I'm on Facebook as well. You can find me on Facebook at Robert D. Hurst. On Instagram, I have two. So I have Rob the Small Business Connector, right? So that's one of my IG handles, and then the other one is Rob the Great, Rob Hurst. Is I gotta look at it now. Is Rob the Great Rob Hurst? Duh, it's the Great Rob Hurst, but it's with an 8. Right? Instead of like spelled out great is GR number 8T, the Great Rob Hurst.
Okay.
So you can reach
Get
out.
all your
My
handles over
email is
to me.
robhurstonline@gmail.com.
Okay.
Huh?
So get all your handles over to me. I'll make sure that if you're watching this, go over, subscribe to Relationships Uncensored on YouTube, and I'll put it in the comments so that if you want to reach out, you didn't catch Rob's contact information, we'll make sure you get it and get you guys connected. Thank you for being on, and it's been my pleasure, my honor to have you. And hopefully we'll see you back on a different topic, dropping some major nuggets like you did today. Have a good
Absolutely.
night,
Thank you so much,
everyone.
Cindy.
All right. Bye-bye.
Take care.